Hi, everybody that just came into the room. Welcome. Uh, let's wait a couple more minutes for people to stream in. In the meantime, if you can see into in the chat that we are all putting in our names, where we are from, and maybe a little bit about our practice. Okay, so you can do that. That'll be great. We have quite a lot of people coming in today. At last count, I think it was about there are about 70 over registrants. So let's give a bit of time for people to stream in. In the meantime, I'll tell a joke. No, it's not. Especially where people are from. Hey, wow, lovely to see all the different where everybody is from. So cool. Okay, I'm gonna start in a little while. People are streaming in. Okay, so while my colleagues are helping me accept people into the room, I'm just going to start off today's think tank session and welcome everybody. Uh, and my name is Yonglun, and I'm from Singapore. Uh, if you if you're not sure where Singapore is, it's in Southeast Asia. It's a tiny country, and usually you just call it a small little red dot, okay, in the world map. Okay, and I'm a musician, an arts administrator, and currently chairing the International Teaching Artist Collaborative, or ITAC for short. The ITAC, or rather International Teaching Artist Collaborative, is a global network of teaching artists, also known as, to you, some of you, community artists, participatory artists, socially engaged artists, or just people who use their artistry to catalyze meaningful social change in their communities. ITAC is a registered charity in Scotland, and we support, expand, and connect the international community of teaching artists and collaborators, and cultivate excellence in teaching artistry and advocate for sustainable development through participatory practice. Our next conference our biennial conference happens every 2 years. Will be in Belgium, 2026. Hope that we can see many of you there. Please become a member of ITAC, and we have a membership platform, which I'm going to share with you later on in the chat. And you get regular updates about our work and how you can be also a part of it. And membership is totally free. So please come and join us. All right. Okay. Before we start the presentation, there's a couple of administrative things that I would like to go through with everybody. So for this think tank, is a series of think tank that we host every month, and every month the topic will be totally different and hosted by teaching artists um, from anywhere in the world. So and it'll be on Zoom. And if you have if you have an idea for think tank you'd like to host, please you can drop me an email or drop ITAC an email. I'll put my email in the chat later on. Um, And really, the aim of these events is to give everyone in this space and sector that feels they have something interesting to share. So if that's you, please let us know and we can have a discussion about upcoming think tanks. Also for today, it's very important to remember that the session is in English and not everybody here it's everyone's first language. So please speak slowly and clearly. We are also coming from a variety of cultures, countries, and perspectives. So I'd like to give a reminder for everybody here that please be respectful and thoughtful in your interactions and responses to each other. Okay, we are a global community here. So also it's also possible that there might be some connectivity issues, or maybe we'll just all get exited from this Zoom room. No worries, just come back into the same link. All right. There's a messaging tool on the right-hand side of the window. Please use it throughout the session. Give your comments. Also, if you're new, and please introduce yourself and where you're from and maybe a little bit about your practice. Also, this is very important. Just to remind everybody that this session will be recorded. It will be uploaded onto ITAC's YouTube page and membership platform. You are welcome to switch off your camera if you are not comfortable being seen in a recording. But it will be great if you can actually show your video, and it will help the different presenters here today. And lastly, this is just so administrative. So please mute yourself and make sure your name is showing under your picture. Okay. All right. So getting into the topic for today, as you know, for security reasons, arts in corrections is one of those teaching artist practices that you don't get to hear much about. And we also recognize that it might not be the most glamorous practice sometimes. However, the arts play a very crucial role in these carceral systems, contributing to rehabilitation, mental health, and prison culture transformation. It helps in mental well-being, healing, skill development, and prison culture transformation, reducing recidivism and facilitating self-reflection. Just want to give everybody a reminder that the work you do, sometimes it might just be a gig, but it means the world to many of those who are being incarcerated. Teaching artists and stakeholders like you guys, you all have a hard part to play to bring the arts into these spaces, and therefore I salute you for that. As well, we also we have a Arts and Corrections Collective that was formed during ITAC 7 conference in Auckland, and it's a group of us that decided to come together to learn from each other and to do something for the practice. We know that the teaching artists and stakeholders in this space are few, and we need to then support each other through the work. The Arts in Corrections Collective, and you can see from the people with this background, will meet monthly to look at the different practices within the global arts and correction space. So I will put up a form later. So if you are keen, please join us. Everybody's welcome, even if you have not started the work in this space yet. For today's agenda, for the former part of the program, it will be for an hour. And after my introduction of the presenters, there will be Neil Wallace will then do a presentation of the Te Ara Ki Runga, or the Path Up. After that will take about 30 minutes. And we will then invite the Arts in Corrections Collective to give their perspectives and ask questions. I know you guys might have a lot of questions, but if you look at point number 5, we will close the sessions within an hour, and we will then have an informal networking where you can ask questions, you can give your comments, and also to encourage people doing this work. Okay, I am proud to then introduce our main speaker for today, Neil Wallace. Neil is the Arts in Correction Advisor for Art Access Aotearoa, Putangi Toi Ki Aotearoa. He supports arts and creativity programs in prisons and community correction sites nationally, working alongside arts educators, facilitators, and organizations to strengthen access to the arts in justice settings. His roles includes offering guidance, fostering connections, and sharing knowledge to help others navigate and develop art initiatives that support rehabilitation and reintegration. With a background in arts education, creative media, and design, Neil has experience in both teaching and supporting arts in community and institutional settings. He is currently pursuing a Master of Design, exploring how Indigenous storytelling can inform arts education in prisons. His focus is on learning and alongside others to help ensure that arts in correction remains a meaningful and effective pathway for engagement, identity, and connection. I'll hand the time over to Neil. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you so much, Yonglun. Ko who am I? Ko Uruao tuku waka. My canoe or waka is Uruao. Ko Aoraki tuku maunga. My mountain, my maunga is Aoraki. Ko Akaroa tuku awa. My waters are Akaroa. Ko Wairewa, ko Onuku, ko Takahanga oku Wharehui. The meeting houses of my people are Wairewa, Onuku, and Takahanga. Ko Ngai Tahu toku iwi. My tribe is Ngai Tahu. Ko Ngāti Irekehu me Katikuri oku hapu. My clans are Ngāti Irekehu and Katikuri. My ancestral lands also include France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, Poland, the Netherlands, Denmark, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Cornwall, Sweden, England, Norway, Germany, and Finland. Ko te kairahi a Toiara Potama toku tūranga. I am the Arts and Corrections Advisor. I advise the Department of Corrections within New Zealand on prison arts programs and lead the National Arts and Corrections Network. Ka nui te mihi kia koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My deepest thanks and greetings to you all. Now, what I just shared with you is called the pepeha, and it is more than just an introduction. It is a statement of identity, connection, and belonging. In Māori culture, we do not introduce ourselves as individuals alone. We acknowledge the land, the waters, and ancestors that shape who we are. Aotearoa New Zealand has two foundational documents. He Whakaputanga, the Declaration of Independence, and Te Tiriti o Waitangi. These documents affirm our nation as bicultural, recognizing the partnership between Māori and European settlers. In honoring this, we uphold tikanga. Tikanga is the Māori principle of working with all peoples appropriately. In my work within arts and corrections, cultural competency is essential. When we engage in the arts, we're working with people's identities, histories, and aspirations. To do this well, we must respect tikanga, ensuring that our approaches reflect the values, traditions, and worldviews of those we work with. A pepeha is a way of showing this respect. It builds relationships, fosters trust, and affirms that each person's story matters. By embedding pepeha and tikanga into our work, we can create meaningful, culturally responsive spaces that support identity, belonging, and transformation. Now, in Aotearoa, there are 18 prisons, holding approximately 9,000 people. Within these facilities, the arts plays a transformative role, profoundly impacting those who engage with them. Research highlights the numerous benefits of arts and correction, demonstrating its effectiveness in fostering identity transformation, helping individuals shift from seeing themselves as offenders to recognizing themselves as artists. For many incarcerated people, past experiences of educational trauma have left them disengaged and fearful of learning. The arts provide a safe and supportive first step back into education, offering a non-threatening environment where creativity can flourish. Participation in the arts also contributes a more positive and stable prison environment by reducing site tension, lifting spirits, and improving attitudes. Through artistic expression, individuals find a voice, communicating thoughts and emotions that might otherwise remain unheard. Beyond personal development, arts and corrections has broader social benefits, including reducing recidivism and lowering the costs associated with incarceration. Most importantly, the arts support rehabilitation, and when people are truly rehabilitated, they're less likely to harm themselves or others. By fostering identity, self-expression, and healing, the arts become a powerful tool for positive change within the prison system. I'd now like to share with you a little bit about the organisation I work for, Arts Access Aotearoa, or Putanga Toiki Aotearoa. The charity I work for is called Arts Access Aotearoa and was founded 30 years ago. Our work is delivered through three key departments. Arts for All advocates for the rights of deaf and disabled people to access and participate in the arts and culture. Creative Spaces facilitates national network of over 50 creative spaces, ensuring that people facing barriers to participation have opportunities to engage in artistic activities. And then there's my department, Arts and Corrections, where our Corrections Advisory Service works directly with prisons and community corrections to strengthen arts programs. We support the development and maintenance of Prison Arts Initiative, facilitate the National Arts and Corrections Network for those with lived experience of incarceration who have benefited from arts programs during their time in prison and who are now giving back to support others to receive the same. The network also includes teaching artists, which we refer to here in New Zealand as arts and corrections educators within this specific niche. Corrections professionals, corrections staff from all across the sites and all levels of staff, Indigenous Māori representatives, academics and researchers, and aligned support services, all coming together in support of implementing beneficial arts programs. Through these initiatives, we ensure that the arts remain accessible, inclusive, and impactful across our country. Now, a little bit more about the Arts and Corrections in Aotearoa. Our Arts and Corrections service is typically delivered by myself, the Arts and Corrections Advisor, supported by our organisation's wonderful administration and communication teams. You'll note Iona's in the mix here today, and she's a wonderful person who does incredible work for us. During COVID, the arts sector was at serious risk and so received government support. And our organisation successfully applied for funding from Manatū Taonga, which is the Ministry of Culture and Heritage here in New Zealand. This enabled us to consult with the sector and develop Te Ariki Runga, a best practice guide for arts and corrections educators. With this funding, we brought on two key staff. Andy Glomb, sorry, it's funny. He likes us to say his name in two different ways. It's Andy Glanville or Andy Glonby, if we will put the French pronunciation on it, who was the Arts and Corrections activator. He led the guide's development, but unfortunately can't be here today. And then we've got the wonderful Brenna, known as Ren Leverton. She was the guide's researcher and writer, responsible for consultation synthesis and writing the guide, who I will introduce you to shortly. We are deeply grateful to Manatu Tonga, the Ministry of Culture and Heritage, for recognising the value of this mahi and making this resource possible. Within our work in arts and corrections here in New Zealand, it's very important to us that we foreground those people with lived experience of incarceration. And so the cover of the guide features a carving created by master carver Mark Lang, who spent a 7-year sentence productively learning his ancestry, his people's values, and the skill of carving. Mark's with us today. Hey, Mark, thanks for being with us. One of the art forms we promote here in our country's prisons is whakairo, or carving. This carving's name is toi te kaitiaki o te wairoa o te tangata, art, the guardian of the human soul. It features a manaia, which serves as a guardian of the gateway between the inner being and the outer being. Then there is the potama design, on which the manaia rests. It's down the bottom of the carving. It's the staircase design. It speaks to leveling up, growing, and taking big steps forward. And then there is the Ngutu Kaka design above the manaia, which represents growth in the physical, spiritual, and family realms. We share Mark's story and his artwork with his permission. Since his release, Mark has started up a hugely successful art gallery where his artwork is shown. He also contributes to his community by showing others' artwork on his walls and by running carving classes for the rangatahi youth in his area. I'd now like to introduce the wonderful Ren Leverton, who will share a few thoughts about what she contributed to this project. Thank you.
Kia ora. Hi, everyone. My name is Ren Levitan. I was the writer and researcher on the Arts Access Aotearoa Arts and Corrections team for the duration of this project. Before going to New Zealand, my background in the criminal justice space was a mix of academic research, community outreach, organizing, advocacy, and creative writing. But playing a role in the creation of Te Ara Ki Runga was such a special experience for me because it gave me the chance to do pretty much all of that at once. So I'm really grateful to be here with you today to talk a little bit about why the guide was created and what it looked like to develop and produce. So this guide was created predominantly in response to the overwhelming need for standardized best practices and overall more structured guidance for arts educators and arts programming within the New Zealand correction system. As Neil has mentioned, in order to build a resource that truly reflects the needs, interests, and scope of this sector, it was absolutely crucial for us to center voices of lived experience throughout the development process. In the early stages of Te Ara Ki Runga, we spoke in depth about past experiences and where the sector has been with as many people as we possibly could. These initial meetings were really key in helping us piece together the whakapapa of New Zealand arts and corrections and repeatedly expanded and reiterated our perception of why we were creating this guide. Across the board, we heard echoes of the need for trauma-informed care resources, accessibility frameworks, humanizing language guidelines, and cultural competency that actively aligned with Māori values and practices. Not only was this essential for us to begin establishing relationships with folks from all over the country, but it also provided us with an opportunity to create spaces that bridged the gap between arts educators, rehabilitation services, and our Potama prison staff. Not only were we making those connections, but we were also watching connections spark between arts educators, volunteers, or contractors and the prison staff that they encountered while delivering programs on the inside. Really, thanks to that vulnerability of the first few meetings, we quickly realized how isolating it can be to be a part of this sector, and uniting the network quickly became another reason for making this guide. The growing Arts and Corrections Network played a huge role in the success of this project. This guide was truly a collaborative effort to not only reflect the diverse needs, interests, and scope of the sector, but also to provide tangible tools to support arts educators in developing and delivering sustainable, impactful, high quality art programs in corrections facilities. As we've repeatedly said, so many different voices contributed to this guide, including but not at all limited to current and former arts and corrections educators of all types of mediums and methodologies, currently and formerly incarcerated artists with experience in prison arts programming, arts therapists and trauma-informed care practitioners, Indigenous leaders and representatives, academics, rehabilitation service staff, and other community stakeholders. I emphasize this again because it was really important to us that Te Ara Ki Runga be by the sector, for the sector. Ensuring that the guide was relevant and effective was an active and intentional process. Conversations with our collaborators regularly informed us on how to continue our work. And a big part of this was getting a grasp of where the sector wanted to go. It was really special to be in a position to ask people about the goals and aspirations they had regarding this work. Artists and corrections staff alike sung praises to me about pieces they'd come out of that had come out of prison arts programming. Actually, an incredible corrections officer at one facility even gifted me this piece that I wanted to share with you guys today. And I hope that you can see at least, oh, part of it. No, with the background, but it's a whakairo piece that was done by an artist who's incarcerated at Waikiria prison. And both of them would be so excited that it's part of the presentation today, and I'm really honored to be wrapping up my portion by highlighting it.
Thanks so much, Ring. You did an amazing job. If it's okay, I'd now like to continue and talk about the different sections within the guide and give a top line perspective on them without getting too far into the weeds. If we look to the start, we look at setting the scene. This section establishes the current landscape of arts and corrections, highlighting the importance of collaboration, cultural competency, and informed practice. Then the next section is mapping the network, which identifies the key educators, corrections staff, and stakeholders, creating pathways for connection, knowledge, sharing, and support. The next section is appreciating our whakapapa. And for those that don't know what whakapapa is, it is your ancestry, your lineage, your tupuna, your forebears. And within this context, it applies to not only your personal ancestry, but in this context, it applies to those who have gone before us and worked within the arts and corrections space on whose shoulders we stand now. And so it's really important that we continue to gather up those stories. And if anyone has them, I'd love to create a repository of them, especially for Aotearoa. Okay, next slide, please. The next section is informed practice. Arts educators must understand the prison environment and participant needs. Engaging in ongoing learning ensures safe, effective, and culturally responsive program delivery. Next section is trauma-informed care. This section speaks about how recognizing, how do I say this better? This section recognizes how trauma affects behavior and learning. Educators will create safe, structured spaces that allow for healing and emotional regulation while avoiding re-traumatization. The next section is accessibility. This involves adapting programs to meet diverse physical, sensory, and cognitive needs. It follows a social model of disability, emphasizing that barriers exist in society, not in individuals. The next section is language. This uses mana enhancing. Now, mana is a vital inner force in Te Ao Māori, in the Māori worldview. Mana is a vital force, and so we want to enhance that. So it uses mana enhancing, strengths-based terms that uphold dignity and respect, avoiding labels that reinforce stigma. In Aotearoa, one way of saying it is tangata, is speaking of those incarcerated, is tangata whai ora, which speaks to those people who are seeking well-being. The next section is cultural competency. Being an arts and correction educator requires understanding cultural worldviews, especially the National Bicultural Founding Document, Te Tiriti, and the impact of colonisation upon the people, Indigenous people of Aotearoa New Zealand. This section emphasises engagement through tikanga Māori, which, remember, tikanga is about correct protocol, whanaungatanga, which is about family and incorporating that into what we do, and manaakitanga, which is, manaakitanga is a pretty big term, and it's really hard to boil it down very simply and concisely, but it's about loving on people and caring for people and showing them the treatment you would want if you were in their shoes. And manaakitanga to foster inclusive and effective rehabilitation. The next section is intentional practice. Deliberate, informed decision-making and program design and delivery. This ensures activities are safe, culturally responsive, and aligned with rehabilitation goals. The next section is setting boundaries. Boundaries are crucial for this work. If you can't maintain healthy, appropriate boundaries, then this work isn't for you. And I have to say it's really important that those people in this space know what effective boundaries are and adhere to them. So establishing clear professional and ethical limits with participants to maintain safety and respect. In our context, within New Zealand, boundaries should align with corrections protocols, New Zealand correction protocols, and be communicated in a enhancing way. The next section is structuring a new program. This involves designing sessions with clear objectives, adaptable frameworks, and contingency planning. You never know when someone's going to come through who's really excited about something that they've just achieved, and you can steer the session to enhance their mana and their work. And then you never know in a session when someone's going to come in and they've had a bad former day and they're in a dark mood, and it requires a different tone of work. This section incorporates routine as important, feedback as important, and outcome measurement while still considering site-specific constraints and participant needs. The next section is reflective practice. Within arts and corrections education, reflective practice looks like finishing a session, having a bit of a step away and a little bit of downtime and self-care, and then reflecting on what went right and what went wrong in that session and how it can be made better for the next time. So this section, reflective practice, encourages educators to critically assess their approaches, adapt to diverse learning needs, and continuously improve their methods for greater impact. The next section is contextual best practice. This aligns arts education with the unique cultural, social, and institutional environments of each correctional setting. Each prison within Aotearoa is different. Their contexts are different. Their staff are different. The people within their care are different. And so creating contextually appropriate programming is super important. This ensures the relevance, effectiveness, and sustainability of arts and corrections programs. Next, I would like to take you briefly over the case studies within the guide, and then to do a little bit of a deeper dive into one in particular. The first one I'll speak to briefly is Mark Lang, the carver, who is with us today, whose artwork proudly showcases on the cover of the guide. who's a former inmate whose life was transformed by whakairo, carving in prison, and now runs his own gallery. If you want to look it up, it's an amazing, you can jump on the website, it's an amazing space. It's called Tika Pono Toy Gallery and Studio in Dargaville, New Zealand. And hearing his voice is so important, and hearing people with lived experiences voice is so important in our work, especially those who have come out from having benefited with from the arts in prison and are now putting it into real world, real life ways and doing it super successfully. The next case study is Anna Mack, who's a solo operator and a musician. One of the things we wanted to make sure that we were doing in these profiles is choosing people who are doing things a little bit differently so that we could see how this could be done successfully in a variety of different ways. And so Anna Mack, an independent contractor delivering holistic music programs in multiple prisons for over 9 years, and she focuses on high security and youth units. Then the next case study is Homeground. This is a Woman for Women Arts group work, a Wellington-based arts initiative for women impacted by the justice system, using trauma-informed creative practices and emphasizing group support. Then we have a case study from Te Kahui, and I might come back to that in a wee while. I'll move on to Hornei Fletcher. Hornei Fletcher is the Māori Principal Advisor for the Department of Corrections, and hearing his voice on what appropriate programming looks like is crucial. This is a man that has done a huge amount of really amazing work. He's an artist and a musician himself. He works for corrections and he advises on all things Māori worldview, Māori art forms. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not wrong, he was supporting Mark inside as well. So Hornei Fletcher is a leader in kaupapa Māori rehabilitation, advocating for cultural competency and through the pōwhiri model and tikanga-based engagement. Then we have a case study on Jess McLean and Christine Harvey, which focuses on weaving and traditional Māori art forms to support cultural reconnection and healing for women in prison. Then we have a case study about Lissy and Rudy Robinson Cole, who bring the joy. These are artists known for their vibrant, joyful crochet artworks, using creativity to uplift and empower people inside prison. Now we'll move back to Te Kahui. Te Kahui is an amazing group. They offer a reflective creative writing program that empowers rangatahi youth in prisons through self-expression and personal storytelling. It's not just about writing, it's about finding identity, healing, and hope. What makes this program unique is it's accessible to all. So it uses visual storytelling, object-based reflection, and kōrero speaking to engage rangatahi youth, including those who struggle with traditional writing. It is mana enhancing. It's grounded in te ao Māori, the Māori worldview, supporting identity and well-being. It has a real impact. It's delivered in youth justice units and prisons, helping youth reclaim their voices. And here's a couple of quotes of what rangatahi youth have said about this program. It gave me a positive view on writing. It can actually take you to a happy place, even in prison. Another quote is, I feel heard for the first time in a long time. Te Kahui offers more than a creative outlet. It's a pathway to self-discovery and transformation inside the wire. Now, I believe this guide has a lot to offer our country, and here are some of the ways. To start with, it strengthens the sector. The guide provides a unified framework to enhance arts education in corrections, ensuring consistency and effectiveness. The guide standardizes best practices. So it establishes clear guidelines, trauma-informed approaches, and culturally responsive methods for educators. It bridges the gap. It strengthens collaboration between educators and corrections staff, fostering mutual understanding and effective program delivery. It supports sustainability. So it supports long-term program viability by embedding best practices and aligning with institutional goals. The accompanying course that goes with it. This is something that I'll be working through with people over a 7-week course. One night a week, people read a chapter of the guide ahead of the class, and I take them through it online, and we just talk it through, we work it through, and via that program we develop, via that course, we get them to develop program proposals. So taking their art streams for those people inside prison and turning them into a reality. So the accompanying course reinforces the guide's principles through hands-on training, equipping educators with practical skills and knowledge. Now, we have a Māori proverb in New Zealand called a whakatoki. This proverb set is he waka eke noa, which means we're all in this boat together. And so working in structured, positive relational ways, for corrections staff to understand the arts and what it can get out of it for those in their care is crucial. And that's why this guide exists. The target audience for the course, I guess I'd be open to taking international people who wanted insight into it as well. It's free. It's basically anyone who wants to understand what best practices within New Zealand's arts and corrections look like and how they are enacted. It's also for anyone looking to build an arts program proposal, as I take people through that as well. Out of this, corrections staff will receive endorsed program proposals. They'll receive my assessment of those program proposals and my assessment rubric and score sheet for those programs. This is vital because not all prison staff understand the arts. And so this guide, course, program proposals, and rubric will allow them to know what standards and benefits to expect from those in their care and those who take part in from those who in their care who take part of these programs and those who run them. Thanks so much for listening to me. I'd like to hand things back to Yonglun, who'll facilitate the next stage. Thanks so much.
Can we just give a round of applause to Neil and Ren for that wonderful sharing, and it's really amazing and incredible work that they have done. And if you want the guide, I actually pasted that link. Please put in your email, and Neil will send you the guide, but he would also ask you to be asking you for comments and ways to improve what has been published. All right. So for the next segment, you please hold on to your question and comments for now. We're gonna have the next segment where we will get international perspectives from the Arts in Corrections Collective, and they will be asking a couple of questions, and after this segment, we will have a 30 minutes where everybody can ask questions to anybody, especially Neil, and about the guide. Okay. So I'm just gonna quickly introduce to you 3 of them from the Arts in Corrections Collective, which is Peggy. Peggy is the curriculum developer and program manager for the theatre arts program for the Singapore Prison Service. She uses a multimodal approach to address the learning needs of inmates to promote literacy, critical thinking, and work ethics. We also have James Pillar. James has a specialization in device community projects and started working with justice-involved youth in 2008 and with the adult carceral populations in 2013. He is from the Old Globe and he's the program associate for Reflecting Shakespeare and Summer Shakespeare Studio. And lastly, we have Erika. She works as her work as a teaching artist at the Old Globe also led her to create the Reflecting Shakespeare program for incarcerated and justice-involved individuals, there's grown in 8 years, 1 classroom to 6 classroom in 3 institutions. Yes, and can I, I'm going to stop share here, and shall we get, so I can see everybody. So shall we get, maybe Peggy to start off first? Peggy, you're muted.
Hi, everyone. Good morning from Singapore. Thanks, Neil, for that very enlightening and insightful sharing of your guide. I've been working in prisons for the past 12 years, and I run a program called the Theatre Arts Program, and in it, I have 4 modules. I have theatre, I have drama, I have body percussion, stage management, and I have movement. And the reason why I designed it this way is because the learners are so different. Many of them have actually not completed elementary school simply because of circumstances, and some of them are quite elderly. So that was why this program. Now, my question to you, Neil, is how do you actually get the teaching artists to actually think about aligning the programs to the prison's rehabilitative goals? Because at the end of the day, we are answerable to that. I mean, art making is great. It has a therapeutic effect. But what are the transferable skills that inmates can use in society with the families, and even to make their lives more meaningful and more livable in prisoners in a place like prison? That's my question.
What a wonderful question, Peggy. Thank you so much for that. So I personally approach helping incarcerated participants engage with identity and personal transformation through the arts by emphasizing the power of storytelling, whakapapa, which is ancestry, and pūrākau, which is ancestral narratives. The process is not about prescribing a single method, but rather creating for individuals to explore who they are, where they come from, and how their identity can be a foundation for personal change. Key aspects of my approach would include encouraging participants to engage with their own ancestral stories as a way of reconnecting with identity, using art as a means to explore and articulate personal narratives, whether that's through visual arts, music, theatre, or creative writing, helping participants see themselves as authors of their own stories capable of change and transformation, and ensuring that the engagement is culturally grounded and respects tikanga with guidance from cultural leaders. So Te Aotearoa is designed as a best practices guide for arts and corrections educators, supporting them in using creative practice to foster identity development and transformation. The reason why I'm framing this is first is because I have to be able to show you what Te Aotearoa is to then compare it to what's needed in the sense of what corrections needs for their outcomes. So Te Aotearoa provides educators with tools, equipping arts and corrections educators with strategies to facilitate identity-focused creative processes. It encourages culturally grounded practices, and it recognises the power of arts in rehabilitation, highlighting how the arts can be a bridge to self-awareness, emotional healing, and positive identity formation. At its core, Te Aotearoa supports the belief that transformation begins with understanding who we are. The arts provide a unique and powerful way for incarcerated individuals to explore that, making personal growth and reintegration into society more meaningful and sustainable. Now, if that's what Te Aotearoa does, we need to then look at the national correction strategy here in Aotearoa to see how the two compare. So the national strategy in New Zealand is called Hokairangi. It is the national strategy of New Zealand's Department of Corrections, and it's focused on reducing Māori overrepresentation in prisons by using identity, culture, and connection as key to rehabilitation. It is built on 6 core pillars. The first being humanizing and healing, treating people with dignity and supporting emotional healing. So that's a major outcome required of course programming. The next one is family-led rehabilitation, strengthening family ties to aid reintegration. That's another core thing that programming must do. And so within arts and corrections context, we have artists creating things that they then share with their families on the outside. The third pillar is incorporating Māori values, embedding cultural perspectives into rehabilitation. I think based on what I've shared with you already, you can certainly see that that's what Te Aotearoa sets up to do. The next thing that the Hokairangi strategy asks for is creating opportunities for learning and personal growth through leadership and pathways. The next pillar is cultural approaches and justice, making Māori worldviews part of the system, and then evidence-based practice using research to improve rehabilitation efforts. All of these things, requirements of Hokairangi National Strategy, are embedded in Te Aotearoa and will be embedded in the programs designed through Te Aotearoa that we help people to create. So Te Aotearoa is a best practices guide for using the arts in rehabilitation. It aligns with Hokairangi, the national corrections strategy, by encouraging healing through creative expression, helping individuals reconnect with their identity and strengthening family bonds through storytelling and reflection. It fosters leadership by building confidence and skills, and supports systemic change by advocating for the arts as a recognized tool in rehabilitation. The guide also ensures that arts-based rehabilitation follows structured, evidence-based approaches. By following the principles of Hokairangi, Te Aotearoa ensures that creative practice is not just an activity, but a meaningful process of transformation and reintegration. And I'll be happy to get more into this if anyone's got any more questions about this specifically after we've hit that part.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Peggy, for the question as well. Shall we move on to James then? Yep.
Hey, Neil. Hey, everyone. So,
Hey, James.
So my name's James. I'm a facilitator on a program here in San Diego, California, called Reflecting Shakespeare, and we work across the adult carceral system in the southern part of the state of California on our program, which is a combination of performance-based work and personal journaling, writing, and investigation. So, Neil, I guess similar to the questions that you answered really from Peggy is when you're looking at programs that come into the spaces that you're working at, what do you see as being successful strategies which really dig into, and maybe this can be across art forms, that really dig into questions of one's own identity and tools of transformation? And I was also curious about that question because you've spoken in depth about really personal identity, ancestry, and all of those things. And I was interested, what came up for me about that is often in the world that I find myself working in, there's a lot of conflict, personal conflict, about one's history or history that you may have absorbed or have put on you, I guess, in some ways. So I wondered how your guide or what practices you may be able to speak on, which might address that. And I was also wondering about spaces where you might find participants in these programs who might find it, for want of a better term, problematic to be in a space with certain other parts of a population.
Awesome, awesome. I think there's about 4 questions in there, James, but I'll have a go, mate. That's fantastic.
You know me, I can't help myself. All right.
No, it's awesome. Just please steer me if there's any part of my answer that misses a specific part of the question. Please help me realign, and I'll see what I can do there. I guess I don't say this much, but I have also been an arts and corrections educator. That's why I'm in this role now. That's why I'm doing what I do now. I personally approach helping incarcerated participants engage with identity and personal transformation through the arts by emphasizing the power of storytelling, whakapapa, ancestry, and pūrākau. Now, James, you mentioned that there might be some people with baggage in that space. And how do we navigate that? What I'm working on at the moment, and it's not so much in Te Aotearoa, although it will happen in its iterations, because Te Aotearoa is an iterative document. It is a guide that will be refined as we move forwards. I start with children's stories. And I start with children's stories because they've got the most beautiful illustrations of people in them. And they've got the most beautiful ways of saying things simply. And it's not that I paternalize or that I talk down to anyone I'm working with, but through stories, children's stories, people can engage with the art and the text. And within Aotearoa, there are, for example, I don't know if you'll be able to see this because of my cover, but let's see if I can get that there. No, it's not going to work. It's all right. We have children's stories. We have ancestral narratives called pūrākau, which include what outsiders would consider to be mythology. And so you can move into that space without anything too close to the person. And the other thing I advise is that the arts and corrections educators themselves understand their own ancestry. So I come from Māori, but also 17 other peoples. And so I can bring an Irish story to the table and share that, and then ask them if they want to share something about them. And from this, create artwork. Does this make sense? Am I getting anywhere near close to answering what you are?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I asked that question about identity and transformation through identity because I think within the populations I might sometimes find myself working with, there are a lot of assumptions about people's identity. And this, in the world I work in, this might be represented by race, for example, or body art, for example, and affiliations. So, and sometimes we might find ourselves in a space where people are trying to leave some of those identities behind. So I'm
Okay.
always very interested in
Brilliant.
that word identity and where it lands.
Let me drill down into that, if I may, and I'll try and do it as concisely as possible because I'm aware of time. There is a principle in Te Ao Māori called tuku iho, which is passing down. So we are part of a line that precedes us and then goes beyond us. And in this, we are just one being in this huge chain. And so tuku iho is about taking what you've been given and honoring it and then handing it down. And so a lot of possibly negative identity and negative stuff around culture and who a person is and stuff can be, it's not that you're trying to ignore it, it's that you're taking it to simpler things. Like you can take a story about a sea monster from the time when your people were pirates or smugglers and share that safely, whereas you might not be able to share something to do with a city story or a specific place's story. And so stories can be a bridge to being able to tuku iho, taking narratives from the past and bringing them into the now, which helps shape your identity beyond the negative into, hey, my people believe in a sea monster that saved them, or my people smuggled to bring food to their families, or and they're honoring and remarkable stories and ancestral narratives, which can feed into a positive identity transformation, especially when the arts are involved and they're making arts from that. Does that sort of?
You got it. You got it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks so much,
Thank
James.
you.
Appreciate it.
James.
And thank you for accepting my wide-ranging ramble. I appreciate you, Neil.
Yeah. Maybe we'll just have the last question for Erika. Quick one.
Well, hey Neil. Maybe I'll kind of, if we're really quick, I can kind of just jump to the question, and just for the whole
Sure
panel,
thing.
that Neil and I discussed a lot of different topics that we could bring up to provoke conversation, and a lot of the narrative has been discussed. And Neil knows about I work with James in this program in Southern California, and we work in carceral spaces and also in reentry and with youth. And our specific program started because our organization, which is actually a producing theater and was getting more involved with its engagement programs, brought a performance that it was touring to a prison. And in all of our practices, when the people we were encountering, the other partners we were encountering, said, "That's great, what else have you got?" The response was always, "What do you need?" And so our program got developed directly out of those carceral leaders saying, "This is what we need." And they described they described a rehabilitative program that used the performing arts, and they offered certain goals. And of course, we dig into narrative and all these things we've been speaking about just now. And to link that ancestral thing, you and I discussed about how we've taken Shakespeare in to implement a lot of these best practices you're talking about, so that as we were being asked to represent this organization, and the whole system was bringing in Shakespeare. Well, how do we do that in a culturally sensitive way? And Shakespeare especially has been used as a tool of colonization, or, and we could go in that direction. So thank you for discussing that. It was interesting hearing about you also how you're naming your Irish heritage and how you might do that. And so that could be a larger topic for another moment. But hearing the best practices, and some that are so deeply rooted in the culture that is unfortunately the majority of your carceral participants. What is your hope for this guide in its international application? Because I'm actually right now having a different response to hearing your saying of the guide in terms of getting the headlines, which is making me think of all the connective ways that I could use it. When I read the guide, my mind flipped on all the alternative ways I would need to shift it for my local population. So it's kind of interesting how I'm experiencing that differently. So what's your hope for its international application?
My wildest dream, Erika, would be that you create your own Te Ara Ki Runga, and that we can learn from that, and that we share our knowledge internationally, and that we support each other. There's in Te Ao Māori, there's a principle called tuakana taina. It's about reciprocity. The tuakana is the older sibling, and the taina is the younger sibling. The older sibling brings knowledge and wisdom, and the younger sibling brings energy and excitement. And it speaks to reciprocity. And so our guide is created by our people and our country and in our context, and we share that with whoever can learn whatever they can from it. We are eager for tuakana. We are eager to hear from people like Peggy, who've spent years and years doing incredible work, from you and James that are doing the same thing, because there's so much we don't know. We're very isolated in this little country of ours. And so if this can spark the development of international relationships with strong ties, that we can hear about how things are done in other ways, that we can consider how that might work in our framework, that's what I'm after. That's what I think we're all after. I hope that answers your question.
It sure does.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
I'm coming in because we really have to end the formal section of this session. Thank you everybody who presented, and we are really appreciative. And if you really want, if you want a copy of the guide, please put in your details into the form that I've put into the chat. And also to join the Arts in Corrections Collective. We will be having the next session most probably in April, and it will be... Erika, you want to say a little bit about the session, the upcoming session?
Yeah, I think the session that we'll lead will be a little bit more like interactive activity oriented. Whatever it is we distill and decide to bring, it'll probably be an example of some activities where we've used to reach our goals, reduce isolation, deepen empathy through this harnessing of an old text, but using it to trigger like creation of something new that can be shared, and maybe we'll be able to even create something in the Zoom space in the moment.
Okay, that sounds very exciting. Please join us. Thank you, everybody.